Good morning, and welcome to this Sunday's worship service. I'm Alan, Georgia, and this morning we're going to explore how the Declaration of Independence and the holiday of Juneteenth intersect in the Black freedom movement from the 1960s until today. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from Sharon Edmond, who will read the famous poem, Let America Be America Again, written by the gifted poet Langston Hughes in 1935. From 1916 to 1922, Hughes actually lived in Cleveland, and he both attended and graduated Central High School in 1922. He moved to Harlem thereafter and became a leading figure in the Harlem Renaissance. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was written with immortal words about liberty. 89 years later, on June 19th, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger, along with Union forces, landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that General Lee had surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse in April that year. So after informing his listeners that the war had been over for 2 full months, General Granger informed this audience, composed of both slaves and slave owners, that human bondage had finally been outlawed. This announcement by an obscure Union soldier had a powerful impact on Black Americans in his audience, and then, of course, throughout the nation. In many cases, slave owners actually kept the news from their slaves that the war was over and that slavery was abolished. While the Declaration of Independence symbolized liberty, Juneteenth symbolized freedom. The new movement that has since mobilized, especially after the murder of George Floyd earlier this year, symbolizes justice. Now, Sharon Edmond will read Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes.
Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be the great strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. Hungry, yet today despite and dream, beaten, yet today. Oh pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker, bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream, in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings. In every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left the dark Ireland shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lay, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed, and all the songs we've sung, and all the hopes we've held, all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood? Whose faith and pain? Whose hand at the foundry? Whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again? Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. For those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Let America Be America Again is one of my favorite poems by Langston Hughes. For while he eloquently highlights the Black experience in building the foundations of America, he makes mention of the Native American, the immigrant, the man, the woman, the poor, white, all those who've contributed to making America what she is and what she could be. And really, if I think about it, letting America become America is an ideal. For as Langston mentioned, America isn't quite her highest self yet. America is a dream deferred. For while we are striving to include everyone, man, woman, child, black, white, red, yellow, purple, indifferent, into the dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it hasn't quite come to fruition yet. America is more so a dream deferred. When I think about how we are more gray than red, white, and blue, how we're trying to balance what we are with what we could be, it makes me think of where we've come from and where we are going. How those moments in history are not our proudest, but it's also led us to have some really great moments as well. From the American Revolution to Nat Turner, to the suffragette movement, to the Stonewall riots, to even now with Black Lives Matter, when it comes to Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, we're trying our best in taking what we don't like and rebelling against that so we can achieve our best self, our highest self, our most ideal self, and letting America be what all of us want it to be, what our forefathers were striving for it to become, even if they didn't realize it at that time. I think we're walking a very fine line at this moment, trying to figure out how to be the best that we can be, to really make America great. I have to say, I don't quite agree with the entire dismantlement of the establishment, but at the same time, I understand the need to readjust, to reevaluate, because while I have immense respect for police, for they run to danger while the rest of us run from it, I also can't deny that if there's a police car behind me, my fear is that the lights will turn on. And then I wonder if I'll make it out of the situation alive. When I think about Eric Garner and Mike Brown, their mothers are my mother. Their sisters are my sisters, and this common thread of love and loss and pursuit of purpose runs through us all. And the only way for America to be America, for her to be her highest self, her best self, is if we all work together. If our unique differences are realized as a greater piece of an interwoven fabric, that we can't do it alone, that no one group has the right answer, that it's going to take us working together, striving for the best that we can be every day, for each other as well as for ourselves, before America can be what she was meant to be.
Hi, my name is Roschelle Obuji, and I'm going to read an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence and the preamble of the Constitution and provide some commentary. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which laws of nature and of nature's God entitles them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separate. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer. While evils are sufferable, then to right them by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. But when a long trail of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariable the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute disposition, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their security. Such has been the patient sufferance under these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. Below this is 27 grievances that the 13 colonies laid out for the separation from Great Britain. What I find interesting as I read through these grievances is that as an African American woman and as an American in 2020, that many of these grievances are those of African Americans today. That when our founding fathers said that all men are created equal, I don't believe that they actually meant all men, but they meant all white men who own property. But what they wrote on this document was sacred, that I believe that they knew that in their hearts that their creators made all men, women, children equal, and that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That even though it has taken more than 100 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence for the Civil War to abolish slavery, and another 100 years for the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we are still in the process of a nation of trying to write and perfect this document that's called the Declaration of Independence. So all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of the things that I find most meaningful is that they didn't stop here in the Declaration. It might have been a fluke if they would have just said all men are created equal and they have inalienable rights to the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the preamble of the Declaration. But they went on in the Constitution, in the preamble, to say, we the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union and to establish justice and to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense and to promote the general welfare, to secure our liberties for ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. They said it twice. So I don't believe that our forefathers really believed that what they were doing was right regarding slavery, but it was an economic decision that has began at the root of the start of this country and has continued on with white supremacy and indoctrination of chattel slavery. And it's so important that people know that we have an opportunity right now in our history, right now in the present time to, make history, to begin to change these things, to begin to look and find ways that we can not just protest, but we can begin to legislate and vote in legislators that will make the change in the document and make the change in the policies to make sure that all men are created equal, that we are created with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I say this because as I watched over the many years of my adulthood, men and women of color being trampled out of their life, their liberty, and their pursuit of happiness, I know right now as a community, as a congregation, we have the voices, we have the power within us to begin to make the change within ourselves. It was a great person who said that we must be the change that we want to see in the world. For me, on this July 4th, I believe that freedom can ring again, and it's beginning to ring, and it's beginning to stir up the same enthusiasm that our forefathers had in 1776, where they're beginning to see that they're tired and that we may not have to do this in a way that we've been accustomed, that we may have to revolt. And that revulsion may look different than it did in 1776, but it definitely needs to happen. And we need to continue to say that we are not going to take this anymore. And that as a people, as a group together, we can make a change for the difference.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
This is The Negro Speaks of Rivers, one of my earliest poems written in 1920, just after I came out of high school. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
So here I am on East 86th Street here in the Fairfax neighborhood. I'm in the Langston Hughes Reading Garden. It's a nicely designed little plot of fenced-in sort of a lot. Very appropriately, there's a little library here, perched where it should be. And behind me, if you can see right up here, this attic window, that's where Langston Hughes spent the last few years of his time in high school, in the city of Cleveland, where he was preparing for the extraordinary events that would take him on the rest of his life, including some time at Columbia University and then time spent traveling globally, like the whole world. But I kind of marvel at this place because this is a stepping off point for him, I think. This is a foundation place where he was going to take his steps forward, really starting definitely from this spot. And the idea that small attic window, you can just see it up there. Definitely a cramped space. Is where he would have been figuring out all of the things that were going to fill up the kind of trajectory of the rest of his artistic career, and certainly would have been the window through which he saw America, really through the lens of Cleveland. It's an extraordinary thing to think about, that the words of that poem we heard before were written only a few months after he left this place. Taking his first steps into literary adulthood. You'll have to forgive me. Now that I'm rewatching my own video, I didn't mean to be quite so somber and overwhelmed. But the fact is that seeing this place up close puts a dramatic spin on Hughes. Somehow, the impact that he had on American culture feels more profound when you realize that he stepped out into the world from this small attic bedroom on East 86th Street. And that's why I wanted to draw our attention to how Hughes thought about rivers while we think about what he said about America. Because the vision of those rivers he reflects upon bridged his time as a student in Cleveland to his time as one of the most insightful and influential American writers of the 20th century. Here, in his own words, he explains why he was thinking about rivers.
I was going to Mexico to visit my father, who lived in Mexico City, and on the train going across the Mississippi River, just outside St. Louis, I looked out the window and I saw this great muddy river flowing down toward the heart of the South, and I began to think about what this river meant to the Negro people, how, in a sense, our history was linked to this river, how in slavery time my grandmother told me that to be sold down the Mississippi was one of the worst things that could happen to a Negro slave. And then I remembered that I'd read about Abraham Lincoln going down the Mississippi as a young man, and he went on a raft to New Orleans, and he saw human beings bought and sold in the slave market there, and he was so horrified by this that he never forgot it. And many years later, of course, we know that it was Lincoln who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, as the train went on into the gathering dusk, because it had been about sunset when we crossed the river, I took my father's letter out of my pocket and began to write down on the back of his letter this poem.
While the Mississippi is in his view, I think that Hughes' early reflection on rivers actually means a great deal for how we understand America and how he would have understood it as well. And it should be especially meaningful for us as Unitarian Universalists. When we talk about rivers and water, we think of new horizons. We think about dignity and the importance of life. But most of all, we think about our interconnectedness. Because the old ways of thinking tell us that nothing is quite as mixed up and intertwined as water. And that rivers are the veins and the arteries of an earth in which we are all linked through waters that go from pond and spring to stream and eddy to river and delta and finally to a salty sea and ocean. So I imagine Hughes sitting alone above the Mississippi, thinking about the heritage of those waters, that he was also connecting that people and those heritages to the lands of ancient Samaria, to the Congo people, to the Nile River Delta, and even perhaps beyond that to those people who, even until today, still hold up along the shores of Lake Erie. We are a people, in other words, who understand our interconnectedness in a way that allows us to remind the world, like Langston Hughes did, that deep down, in the most ancient and muddy parts of ourselves, that we are all the same stuff, the same waters, and flowing through all of us is that element of life that keeps and sustains us.
Each week, we come together as a people. Together, we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
Good morning. My name is Eileen McCully. Most of you know me. I really miss being with you.
And my name is Laurie Albright, and I echo Eileen. I miss you too.
We thought that since we've just had our national birthday, the 4th of July, that it's a good time to reflect on the promises that were made at the founding of our nation. In recent weeks and months, we've had a lot of evidence that there are people in our nation who don't feel like they live in a place with liberty and justice for all.
In fact, some black people I know will say things like, no, I'm not going to celebrate the 4th of July. Instead, I'm celebrating Juneteenth, when 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, enslaved people in Texas learned that they had been freed. You know, in our country's history, we have a pattern that seems to evidence itself where there is forward progress on rights for all, and then a backlash. Forward, backlash, forward, backlash. But we do want to thank our white men for that original 80 years after the founding of our country, passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments. So in all of that back and forth, Eileen, where are we now?
Well, one good index of where we are as far as liberty and justice for all is the rates of incarceration that we experience in this country. Prior to the 1980s, although our rates of incarceration were higher than most other nations, we went through a period of explosive growth in incarceration. You might remember the rhetoric of that era about the war on drugs and being tough on crime. There was also an introduction of privatization into the criminal justice space. And for a variety of reasons, our rates of incarceration have exploded. And now we are by far and away the nation that locks up more people than any other nation. And I'm not just counting democracies. We have more people per 100,000 incarcerated than Russia and China.
So, gosh, Eileen, that is discouraging, and I think we all, as justice-seeking people, feel moved to try to make that better. So, what can be done? I know I look to, and I think most people in our congregation have read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, where she very clearly outlines how intertwined and ententacled the justice system in our country is. And it will never be sufficient to just change a law here, change a rule there, get rid of a few bad actors here and there. The whole system needs to be addressed if there is going to be any change in the outcome of what goes on in our country right now to better bring justice for all people in our country. So, what can we do now?
Well, you and I both have chosen to become deeply involved in the work toward bail reform. Why don't you tell people a little bit about how you came to that work?
You know, in November of 18, the marshals issued a report regarding our county jail after people began dying. It almost seemed like one or two every month. And I was horrified to learn that our own Cuyahoga County Jail in my backyard is one of the worst jails in the country. And so many of us in the justice community felt called to do something about that. And to do something about it, you need to understand it. I assumed that most people were in the jail because they had been found guilty of things and were serving that time. I was horrified to learn that half to two-thirds of the people in the jail were there before they had been found guilty of any crime, and were there because they couldn't make the bail that was required for them to be able to stay out of a cage before their judicial hearing.
So wait a minute, let's just emphasize that. You're saying that half the people in the county jail have not been convicted of anything.
Right.
They're innocent.
Right.
Wow. So you and I both have become active in this bail reform project that's run through the ACLU. One of the things that we do is we try and spread that message, that information, that you may think you know what's going on at the Cuyahoga County Jail, but I bet you didn't know that more than half the people there are actually innocent. As Laurie stated earlier, whenever we have progress, we have pushback. And one of the ways that we're experiencing pushback now is in an over-reliance on electronic monitoring. That means ankle bracelets. So people who are able to get out on bail are often made as a condition of their release that they have to wear this ankle monitor and that they have to pay for it at $56 a week. Not only is it expensive, but it really limits their flexibility, their ability to go to work, and to be with their families because they have curfews and lots of other requirements like that. So we would love to have everybody join us in signing the petition to have the county assume the cost of those ankle bracelets. You can do that by going to the ACLU of Ohio website and finding the petition and signing it there.
And further, Cleveland was blessed with the Bail Project coming in, which are two amazing men who work with people who have been recently arrested and use funds to post bail for them and offer them support during that period of time so that they show up for their hearing and things go along smoothly. It's extremely successful. The plate offering today is for that project. If you can contribute to that, that will certainly make a difference in people's lives right here in our backyard.
Thanks. We look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.
Bye.
All these chains
Let's close today with these words. Spirit of love, of compassion, and of justice, please fill us with resolve. Let us not be shy to turn away from hard questions and difficult conversations with determination to always do better. Help us to know that as imperfect and insufficient as our efforts almost always are, that they are drops in a moving stream in which we must swim, startled and determined by the rush of energy around us and within us, carrying us forward. Please go now in peace and in good health to do justice in the world.